Your fever spikes at midnight. Your body aches. There is no pharmacy down the street, no doctor on call, no bottle of medicine in a cabinet. For most of human history, this was simply what illness meant. For roughly 300,000 years, getting sick was not a trip to a clinic. It was a test the entire group faced together. You might think a sick person in an ancient band was left behind, abandoned to fend for themselves while the group moved on. That image shows up again and again in movies and textbooks. But the archaeological record tells a very different story. Consider the skeleton known as Shanidar I, found in a cave in northern Iraq. This was a Neanderthal man who lived roughly 45,000 years ago. Paleopathologist Eric Trinkhaus, who spent decades studying Neanderthal remains, documented that this individual had a withered arm, damage consistent with blindness in one eye, and hearing loss. He had almost certainly lost the use of one arm entirely. And yet, the bones show healing, old injuries that had mended over years. Here's the part that matters. A person with those disabilities could not hunt, could not gather efficiently, could not defend themselves alone. He should have died fast in a world of predators and scarcity. Instead, he lived for years, maybe decades after his injuries. Someone fed him, someone protected him, someone carried him when the group moved camp. What does that tell you? It tells you that care for the sick and injured is not a modern invention layered onto human nature. It is ancient. It may be one of the oldest human behaviors we have physical evidence for. So how did it actually work? What did people do when a member of the band spiked a fever or broke a bone or came down with a wasting illness that no one understood? Let's reconstruct a scene. You are part of a small band, maybe 20 or 30 people, moving across a landscape you know intimately. One morning, a woman who usually leads foraging trips does not get up. She is burning with fever. Her breathing is shallow. The camp does not panic, and it does not abandon her. It reorganizes around her. Someone builds up the fire near where she lies, because heat matters when a body is fighting infection. Someone else brings water, because dehydration kills faster than most fevers do. An older member of the group, someone who has seen fevers like this before, starts preparing a plant remedy. Willow bark, for instance, contains salicin, the same chemical compound your aspirin bottle is built around today. Ancient peoples did not know the biochemistry. They knew that chewing certain bark reduced pain and brought fevers down, because generations before them had noticed the same thing and passed the knowledge on. This is the part modern people often miss. Ancient humans were not stumbling around blindly, hoping something worked. They were running a multi-generational experiment. Try a plant, watch what happens, remember the result, tell your children. Over tens of thousands of years, that slow, patient trial and error built up enormous bodies of practical medical knowledge, passed down entirely through memory and spoken word. Anthropologist Richard Lee's landmark 1963 fieldwork among the Juhuansi, a hunter-gatherer people of the Kalahari Desert, documented exactly this kind of accumulated plant knowledge, still functioning in living communities in the 20th century. Individuals could name dozens of plants and precisely which ailment each one addressed. This was not folklore in the dismissive sense. It was empirical medicine, built without laboratories, refined by necessity, and it was not only physical treatment. Anthropologist Polly Wisner, who spent years studying the Juhuansi's social networks, found that these groups maintained wide-ranging relationships across dozens of camps, specifically so that support, including care during sickness or hardship, could flow between bands when one group faced a crisis. A smaller unit could not handle alone. Illness was not just a medical event, it was a social one, and ancient humans had built social infrastructure to handle it. Now picture the twist, the part that reframes everything you think you know. You might assume smaller, tighter-knit ancient bands had it worse when disease struck, with nowhere to turn and no real medicine. In some ways, they may have had something modern society has quietly lost. Constant, physical, attentive, human presence. No sick person in one of these bands went through their illness, watched over by a screen, or left alone in a room for hours. Someone was always near. Someone was always monitoring. That kind of attention, what researchers studying stress and healing today call social buffering, actually measurably affects recovery. Chronic isolation during illness raises stress hormones and slows healing. Ancient humans, without knowing any of the underlying biology, had accidentally built a system that optimized for exactly the thing modern medicine is only now rediscovering the value of. This does not mean ancient life was some idyllic wellness retreat. It absolutely was not. Infant mortality was brutal. Infections that a course of antibiotics would clear up in days could and did kill adults in their prime. There was no surgery for a burst appendix, no insulin for diabetes, no antivirals for anything at all. If your illness outpaced the group's plant knowledge and the body's own defenses, there was often nothing more to be done. This was a world of real, constant loss. But within those brutal limits, the response to sickness was not abandonment. It was reorganization. The group slowed down. Foraging routes shifted to stay near a person too weak to travel. Food was shared disproportionately toward whoever needed it most, even in times of general scarcity, a pattern documented again and again across foraging societies, studied by anthropologists including James Sussman, whose long-term work with the Juhuanzi describes exactly this kind of flexible, needs-based sharing as a defining feature of how these communities function. Think about what that means for your body right now, still running on the same nervous system, the same stress responses, the same deep evolutionary wiring as that Neanderthal in the Iraqi cave. Your body still expects care when it is sick. It still calms down faster in the presence of another attentive person. It still releases fewer stress hormones when it knows it is not facing a threat alone. None of that machinery has changed in 45,000 years. What has changed is how often modern life actually delivers it. Next time you're sick and you're lying in bed with a fever, reaching for a bottle instead of a bundle of bark, remember that the medicine has changed almost completely. The instinct behind it has not. Somewhere in your nervous system is the same ancient expectation that Shanidar one depended on. The expectation that when your body fails you, someone will still be there. Your fever spikes at midnight. This time, you're not alone in it, even if you feel like you are. Somewhere behind that feeling is 300,000 years of humans figuring out, one fever at a time, that survival was never meant to be a solo project.